Welcome to Photoshop Tutorial 1, creating a simple non-vector logo in Photoshop. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to work with layers. We're going to learn to use the place feature. We're going to learn how to use the marquee tools, or selection tools, also known as sometimes. We're also going to learn how to use the zoom, the line tool, the ellipse tool. We're going to learn about the transform path tools, such as scale, rotate, etc. We're also going to learn how to use the paint bucket tool, and we're going to learn how to use the layer blending options or layer styles in Photoshop. In this tutorial, we're going to start with a sketch, and we're going to take the sketch from being a piece of paper, and then we're going to scan it into the computer. Well, you'll begin with a scanned in image, but then we'll take that scanned in image, we'll bring it into Photoshop, and we'll output a digital graphic in its likeness. As you can see here below, where I've started with a sketch and ended with a digital likeness. So let's open up Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop CS6 Extended, but many of these tools are very similar or work the same in older versions of Photoshop. Here you can see Photoshop automatically opened a PSD file that I had done. This is the file that I worked on previously, so that I would know what we were going to be going over in the tutorial. I had a request from a friend to do some tutorials, and he's new to Photoshop, so I thought that this would be something good to go over some basic tools. And this is another version where I've simply used a stroke of black and a solid white fill on the letters, rather than the gradient, as in the one shown in the presentation. But we're going to close this, and we're going to go ahead and start our tutorial. So once you get Photoshop open, you're going to go to File up here in the left corner, Menu, and go to New. Click New, or you can hit Control N, short key. Then you're going to want to select the web preset. There are other presets, as you can see, presets for mobile devices, presets for film and video, presets for photo, Photoshop's default size, things like that. And that just depends. It just changes up like the type of unit of measure that you're working with. Usually something done for print is much larger than things done for web. But for this tutorial, we're going to select web. The default size of 800 by 600 is fine, and that's pixels in pixels. We can change it to inches, and I say 11 inches approximately is 800 pixels. That's 800 is your width by your height, equal to older screen resolutions. You don't tend to find that anymore. The background contents, we're going to keep it white for now, just because it can be easier when drawing. And our color mode, we're going to keep RGB color for now, though once we finish we may want to actually save it, or just change the color mode before we save it to CMYK color mode, because that's the standard really for graphics. So go ahead and click OK, and you'll see that you start out with a beginning layer. Also, if your view has been changed, we want to make sure we're using the same view, so go to, or window setup anyways, go to window in the menu, go down to workspace and click essentials, which is the default view for Photoshop. And you should see a similar setup as I have here, which a color dropper picker, color picker window, some adjustments for usually for photos, things like that, and layers. And we're just going to concentrate on the layers. So you'll see that the initial background layer is locked and we can't unlock it, and that's fine for right now. But if we wanted to do something to the background, we would right click and duplicate the layer, and this is going to be the new name of the layer. Background copy is fine. Destination, just leave the same. And as you can see, now we have background copy, which is exactly the same as the background minus the lock. And now we can do things with it if we want, and we can even delete this layer if we wanted. And I'm going to go ahead and do that because we have this background copy, and if we choose to do something with it, we will, and we can, and if not, well, then we'll just leave it alone. So the first thing we want to do to get started here is we're going to import our sketch into Photoshop, and we're going to do that by using the place feature. So we'll go to File and go down to Place and click it, and it's going to open up somewhere, but you're going to locate where you've stored the image, the sketch if you're using it, or another sketch if you want to use a sketch of your own. I'm sure what we do will be similar, or you could do similar things, I'm sure, to a custom sketch of your own. So there's my sketch. I'm going to click Place. After I select, I'm going to click Place, and you can see it's brought it into Photoshop on a layer of its own, which sits on top of the background layer. And that's important, because if I were to take this layer, click it, and well, we'll go there. We'll get there in a second. I'll show you that in a second. It's not going to let us do that right now because it wants us to finish the placement. And so what it's done is it's brought it in here, put it on its own layer, and then now it's giving us the option to scale and adjust it. So what we're going to do is we want this graphic to take up as much space as possible, and it's okay if it distorts a little bit because we're recreating it. And so by doing this, we'll actually increase the visibility and be left with a larger image than we otherwise would. So we don't want to grab in the middle, because even if we click Shift, it won't constrain the proportions. Same goes for if you've done that just like I have, please press Control Z so that it goes back to normal. And it does the same thing on either of the middle dots, or middle anchors, I'm sorry, if you want to be more specific. So we're going to want to hold the Shift key first, and then we're going to click on a corner, and we're going to drag, while holding the Shift key still, we're going to drag this out until we're almost cutting off the pencil portion of the graphic. And then we're going to grab this corner and stretch it again out until we get to the pencil portion of the graphic. And now you can see that we can no longer see our anchors. We've gotten too big. This is a good chance to utilize the zoom tool. If you can see down here, yeah, I could click the zoom tool, but it would force me to go through the place to open up the tool. So I don't want to do that because I'm not done placing. So another way is by using the shortcut keys. I can actually just hold the control key and hit plus to go forward and zoom in, or hit minus to zoom out. So I'm going to zoom out until I have enough space to play with the anchors some more. And then I'm going to do it some more, the same thing that we were just doing, stretching out the graphic until it fills our space of 800 by 600 that we have, without cutting off any of the pencil portions. And looks like we're close to about to that point. If I stretch any farther, we'll lose it on the top because we're constraining proportions. See, we'll lose it at the top, so we'll leave it there. And if I constrain it anymore this way, I'll lose it at the bottom here. I'll lose it at the bottom here. So we're going to accept that as being done, and so we'll come up here and we can either cancel by hitting the kind of no symbol here, which we don't want to do. So we're going to actually click the check mark to say yes, place this. We can also right click somewhere on the graphic and click the place button. So I'm going to use the check mark, and now the graphic is placed. So don't do this, or you can, but make sure to Control Z and undo the movement afterwards. But I'm just going to do this to show you. If I click and drag this, you can see that even though all we could see before was this portion, the rest of the graphic is still there. If I drag it around, we only see 800 by 600 pixels because that's our window size for the graphic that we're working on. So in order to get rid of all of that, what we can do now that we've stretched it out is we can crop it. And as you can see, we want to be able to get really close with this to save space and file size and things like that. So we're going to go up to the menu again, and we're going to click View, and we're going to go down and click Fit on Screen. The shortcut key to this is Control 0. And now you can see it's much larger, much clearer, and we'll be able to work with it much nicer. So from our before we can actually edit the pixel data of this particular image, we have to rasterize it. Otherwise, it's just it's just pixel data sitting on a layer. So we need to rasterize it. Now, when we go and we crop the image, we just click the crop button, and like we said, it was already stretched to the window. We'll move it a little bit so it actually gives us the crop, and we'll crop it. Now, if I go to the selection tool and make sure I'm select on the layer and drag it, you can see that black is now gone. Where'd it go? It's gone. We cropped it out. The white that you see is from our background. If I click this little eye symbol here that indicates layer visibility, you can see that now we see a checker background. This checker background is just the default kind of background that Photoshop uses to tell you that you're looking at a transparency. So there's nothing there. That's supposed to represent nothing. Clear. It's nothingness. Transparent. And then when we bring our background back, you can see now it's white again. So I'm gonna hit Control Z, and that's gonna bring back the graphic into the center, and I'll move it again so you can see the black is not back, and hit Control Z and back to center. So now that we've got our graphic in here and our background copy, we're going to come over here and we're going to click this lock symbol. That's going to lock the background. And we're going to select the image layer, and I'm going to double click on that text so that it opens up, lets us edit it, and then I'm going to rename it to sketch because that's what it is. And now I'm going to lock it. And this is so that we don't accidentally delete some of this pixel data, because we are going to actually trace this. Now there may be other ways to do this, but this is one of the ways that I commonly use. If someone knows a better way, easier way in Photoshop to do something similar, feel free to send me an email. So now we're going to open up our line tool by coming down and hovering over the square tool and right clicking so that you can see the selected tool is rectangle, not square, rectangle tool, and there's a bunch of other tools that are similar. These are variations. The tool we're going to use now is the line tool, so we're going to go ahead and click on that. And now you can see that our cursor has changed and we have new options up here specifically for the line tool. For what we're going to do, since we're going to actually trace out these letters, trace out the outline of these letters, we want each one of our lines to be attached to each other. So we'll go to, well, okay, it's not going to let us do it like that. We have to start getting some going. But so we're going to change the size of the line from 3 point to 1 point, and you can see now that it's much more like a little pencil line. Then we're going to use Control Plus and zoom up and start up here at the top corner of the N. And when we begin to use this line tool, like if I do this and I create a line, as you can see in our layers, it automatically created a new layer for us. So we don't have to go up to layer and go to new or anything like that. It automatically will create a new layer for the shape. Excuse me. So you can see that even though there's some mess up here from the pencil lines, we can fix those because we're recreating the graphic so that it's, much cleaner and can be used on the web as well. So to start out, we're going to click right here at the back corner of the N. Excuse me. And the trick to doing this process this way is to use small lines. If I try to just go all the way down here, right, you can see that in here there's a big huge gap right here, and I'm not following closely enough to the sketch. It's one thing to try to cut out imperfections in the sketch. It's another thing to totally bypass curvatures that are meant to be there. So the trick to it is to do small lines. And then with small lines, you can create curves. So as you can see, if I hover my crosshair over the line that I just made, it's just normal. But if I hit the shift key, you can see it adds a plus symbol to the cursor. What that means is that it's gonna attach that. It's gonna attach this new line that I make onto the same shape and layer as the last one, which is what we want. So I'm going to hold the shift key and get close and click, and as you can see, it starts right at the edge of the old one. And if I let go of shift, then it lets me, if I hold shift key, then it's gonna want to hold the line as straight as possible. 45-degree angle, a 0 degree angle, negative, 90, as you can see. So if we let go of shift, then we can do individual angles. So that's what we want to make sure we do. So we'll keep going like this until we outline the end. Just doing small little lines and holding the shift key each time so that the lines stay combined together. And doing small lines allows us to keep our curvature. And this process can be a little bit tedious, yes, but I mean, so such goes graphic design. And if you mess up one time, just use the Control Z. If you mess up a bunch of times, use Control Shift Z. Or I'm sorry, Control Alt Z. Control Shift Z would go forward. And it's easiest to keep your lines on top of each other if you click right away off and on to create your new line. Now this particular line, we're gonna fix a little bit of this by straightening this out with a real long one, and then we're going to do a few small ones. I messed up. Hit Control Z. There we go. Hit Control Z. Hit Control Alt Z. There we go. Okay. Hit Shift again. Make sure it's on there. And we want this not close enough. If you still can't get it on there, you can try zooming up on your line so that you can really get that crosshair on there. Hold the Shift key. Now we're right there on it. Now what we want to do is just add a little bit of a small point and do it again so that it's going to seem like a little bit of a curvature. And we're going back up the other way. And now, for convenience, I'm going to zoom back out a little. And we'll keep going. And while this can take a little bit of time, and see, we're gonna curve out these hiccups a little bit. These two we don't want, and that's just my preference. I'm trying to avoid too sharp lines. Of course, I guess in this particular situation, it's kind of calling for it. So I'm gonna back up a couple of lines, and I'm going to straighten out. I'm gonna straighten this out. Do something like that. Then I'm going to, I just feel like my art senses are telling me that this is what I need to be doing. Perhaps you disagree. It's up to you. Now I'm gonna go from here. And I'm just using the scroll on the mouse to go up and down, so I don't have to go over to click the scroll bar. It makes it a little bit more convenient. Holding Shift, and let's go ahead and zoom through here. These lines are mostly straight, but you don't want to get too brazen with it because you'll end up kicking yourself. And we'll make this crevice, and sometimes if you're not sure, zoom it out. See, and this particular sketch is calling for a little bit of a crevice going up, so we're gonna make it with our lines. we are going to add it in as well because it should be there. Zoom out just a tad. No, not close enough. Not for my taste. There we go. Then I'm going to zoom out because I just want to double check the sketch and see if I'm on par with what I want it to end up looking like. Sometimes, you know, when you're doing art, you gotta take a step back. I think that works for me. I don't know. Maybe skinnier. Maybe, yeah, maybe just a little bit skinnier. We're gonna go down the inside path of the shadow because I think that's where it should be. I'm just gonna try to speed this along a little bit. Feel free if I'm going faster than you are to pause the video. Okay, and we're gonna back out, and we're hitting a collision. And the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna trace out the individual characters. And the reason for that is just because it makes it nicer later on when we want to make changes to the logo, because we can interact with each individual piece rather than having to possibly break them apart again. So we'll trace each individually, and I want to see if, yeah, that looks like a good ending for it. So we're going to start going back up. Actually, no, I'm going to back up a line or two and end inside of the shadow like we've been doing. And we're going to try to not too long of lines because we want to try to keep curvatures. As you may know, you can make a whole circle with lines if they're small enough. Take a step back. Uh-oh, we have a problem. These shapes didn't get attached. There you go. What I did is I selected both layers, and then I right clicked and I said merge shapes, and what that did is it connected all of our line shapes back together to a single shape. You want to make sure that you do that if that happens to you, which that just means at one point over here we weren't properly holding the shift key. Okay, so back to where we were. Shift. Come up here. Make these attachments. And I'm going to zoom out a bit. Make sure I get this just right. Maybe too much. Here we go. And I want to try to ride the outside shadow here and avoid any sketch hiccups. This shadow here going up seems to be a sketch hiccup. So I'm going to try to avoid that and ride this line here. And keeping semi-short lines to keep the curvature. and you'll get a feel for doing those small lines. You'll get a feel for really how big a line, how long a line you want to do as you do it. Now this, I believe, is meant to be a straight back, so we're going to run this line all the way down just like that. And we're going to continue to run. Well, let's see, let's back out. I want the I believe that this portion of the end, if we follow the inside, I believe it'll look too skinny, so I'm going to follow the outside of the shadow. And you just gotta kind of, use your eye. That's what makes it art. And we're gonna go down and just to the middle of the crevice on this one, because that's gonna give us a good line back up. We don't want to curve, we want to straighten this out. This is another hiccup in the sketch we're going to straighten out. See, I came off there. I'm gonna hit Control Z. I wasn't properly holding Shift. I'm gonna go back, Shift. There we go. When it drops the highlight like that, that's when you know that you're no longer selecting that. You're on something else. And when I saw that happen, I knew right away that that's what had happened. So we're gonna continue. We're almost done with our end. And we're going to try to keep a little bit of this curvature, but we don't want it to get crazy, so just a little bit of a dip. Try to keep it a smooth dip, just in case. And there, we're gonna end it right on our other line. Boom, looks good. Now let's zoom out a little bit, or we can hit Control 0. And now you can see where if I hide the original sketch, you can see there's our now new outline of the end. Not too bad. So now that we have the end shape done, we'll come down to the layer that it's sitting on. That says, for me, it says shape 3. Could say shape 1 or 2 or whatever for you. Double click that, the tag right on the text, and we are going to rename that the N, or you can use it whatever character your sketch is, and hit enter. Now we can go ahead and hide that for later. Excuse me. And then we're going to go ahead and start on doing the same thing to the eye. And then when we're finished with the outlining the eye, we're going to take a little bit of a different route in doing the ellipses here. So, okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start using the same line tool. We're going to start on the eye. So we'll do Control plus and zoom up on the eye. and we'll start right here on the left shoulder. For the eye, we're gonna start on the outside of the shadow here, and we'll start right on the corner. There we go, and we'll do a small line and try to complete our curvature. And if you're not using a sketch at all, you can use the line tool just to draw it out. If you don't want to use the line tool, you could use the paint tool, paintbrush, or also the pencil tool. This is just, I find this nicer because I like to sketch things out on paper first. And you may find yourself in a situation in which maybe a client has given you a sketch or some other form of the drawing, and that you need to be able to get into digital form to be able to edit. In that case, this comes in quite handy. For this particular situation, you can see that we've now run out of eye space. If we simply follow what we can see, then we're going to end up with a slightly odd shaped eye when we want to do things to it later. Maybe later on, or we want to do something to separate the letters, or the client decides later that they'd like them separated. You don't want to have to redraw all of this. By tracing out the hidden portion of the eye, we can have the full eye to work with. So that's what we'll do. We'll go right over the end, and using your imagination, you will recreate this portion, this lost, overlapped portion of the eye, just by trying to kind of, follow the same kind of curvature as we've been doing until you get down to match up with what you believe to be the bottom, which for me I think is right here, because then our next line will go right along the bottom of the eye. And you can see there's some fudging on the sketch, and we're going to go right through that too. Keeping small lines will keep you away from having sharp points as well. It just makes the graphic look much nicer. And if you have really tight curves, you definitely want to use smaller lines, or else you will be able to really see the blockiness kind of look to it. We messed up. There we go. Okay. Now, before we do anything else, let's Control 0, and so we can look at everything, and we'll look at both lines together. So that's what we've got so far. And as you can now see the rest of the eye here, as opposed to in the sketch where it's covered up. So what we want to do is, right now these are individual line segments. So what we want to do is we want to come up to believe it's this first one. Yes, click on this first tool here in the setting in the line tool options, and go down and select merge shape components. And I'm gonna zoom up really quick before I do that so that you guys can see exactly, and it's easier to see with the sketch. As you can see, each of these individual lines here, right? Blink, 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 all these lines, these cross lines going through, these are where we've connected each one of our different line segments to make a shape. With the one you're working on selected, in this case the N, because we didn't do it yet, go up and click right here on the path operations and select merge shape components. And you can see it did it somewhat over here where it's taking the lines out, but as you can see, there's still some places, so we're gonna go and we're gonna do it again, or we're gonna go into combine shapes. It's not working exactly how it should be. Why are you not doing what you should be doing? It only kind of partially did it for me. Trying to inspect why that is. Well, it says it's done it. Let's see if it works better on the eye. So we'll just trust that it's actually worked, and we'll do the same thing with the eye. Hopefully it works more accurately. So now we're going to go and we're going to click on the path operations and go to merge shape components. Okay, it's not letting us. Okay, so yeah, merge shape components. See, there it did it fairly well. Still some spots, but that's okay. It did what we wanted. And it shows up when you're not selected on it. As you can see, they're all connected. So okay, let's go and hit Control 0 and back out, and now we need to work on the circle. We want the circle to stay on the same layer as the eye, because it's part of it and it's all one thing, so that's what we're going to do. Now go back to our line tool on our toolbox and right click on it and go down and select the ellipse tool. While holding the shift key, we're going to click in the upper left hand corner here and create a nice big circle that and while holding the shift key, so we get a perfect circle. And if you don't like where it's starting out, just release it, Control Z, and start from another spot. But don't forget to hold the shift key, or it'll put it on a layer of its own. Now that looks like it's a pretty good circle, and it looks like it's in the intended location on the sketch, so we're gonna let go. And as you can see, it was a 1 point width or size on the line that was used, and you can see that there was no new shape created. So now I'm going to right click on the shape text on the layer and rename it to a lowercase I, because that's what it is. Now I'm going to hit Control 0 to redo the view on the screen. You can also go to View, Fit on Screen. Now let's hide our sketch for a moment and just see where we are. As you can see, there we go, we have the N and the I traced out. So let's bring our sketch back. Now the next thing that we need to do is, and if you want to, you can also hide the created I and N it's causing confusion. Now next, we're going to still use our ellipse tool, and we're going to recreate these sketched ellipses, but we're going to make them much smoother. First, we're going to create one, and we're going to create the first one by trying to trace out with it as closely as we can without being as disturbed. And we're just gonna just click normally without hitting shift, because this will be on a new layer. And it's not going to completely line up, that's fine. So just select it like that. Now we got about the same size ring. Go ahead and let it go, and it'll create a new layer called ellipse 1 or ellipse some number. Now as you can see, it's still straight up and down. It's not quite leaned over like our other one was. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to edit in the menu and go down, while we have this layer selected, go down to transform path and select rotate. We can automatically rotate it 180 degrees or 90 clockwise or 90 counterclockwise, or we could flip the image horizontal along the horizontal axis or along the vertical axis. We want to control the rotation, so we're going to click rotate, and it's going to give you like a resize kind of box, but when we click on the corners, instead of resizing, it's going to rotate. So we're going to go to rotate this until it's a little bit closer matching the graphic. We can just select it and move it anywhere we want. You can also grab this little target in the middle and drag it to an anchor, and as you can see, now when I rotate, it's rotating along that pivot. Generally you want to keep this snapped. You see it kind of snaps into the middle, and now it'll rotate on the center axis, so that can be handy sometimes. So now what we want to do is go ahead and hit the check mark to finish the creation of the ellipse. And if you want to see where it's at right now, you can go ahead and hide your sketch again and bring back the eye, and I can see that it's just like that. So what we want to do is, it's not quite how I like it, so I want to adjust this, and on the same ellipse layer I want to go back to transform path, and I want to do perspective. And this time it gives you the same style looking box, but this time when I grab a corner or anchor, it's going to adjust it like as if I'm looking at it from a different angle. And once I get one that I like, and I think it hovers the eye correctly, because it's supposed to be like an atom, kind of like that, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now what I need to do is, if we look in the sketch, there's two more of those. So what we can do is right click and duplicate this layer, and ellipse 1 copy, click OK. And it's okay that they're on different layers, and that's actually going to be a good thing, and we'll see why in a moment. So there's already a new ellipse there. So if we go to edit, transform path, and rotate again, when we start to rotate this, you'll see it's a second one. So we're going to rotate this one horizontal. Okay, and we'll try to match it up with well, go ahead and commit the transform, but what we want to do is try to match it up with one of the ellipses in the sketch, so that we're as close to the sketch as we can get. So we'll go, once you bring the sketch back, go back, transform path, rotate, and we already have one copying this ellipse, so let's copy this ellipse by rotating this one until it kind of lines up with it. It doesn't need to be the same size, it's okay. Just use your eye and commit that, and then go ahead and hide the sketch again. You can see we have two ellipses. Now go ahead and copy the copy, duplicate the layer. Okay, and so we have ellipse 1, copy 2. This is the second copy made from the original ellipse. Now when we go to edit, transform path, and rotate, we're going to do the same thing. And before we do that, we're going to bring the sketch back. So edit, click, make sure you're selected on the proper ellipse layer. Edit, go to transform path, rotate, and now we're going to try to align it as good as we can parallel with this other ellipse in the graphic, in the sketch. So we'll commit that. That looks pretty good to me. And then we'll hide the sketch. And there we go. We'll bring the end back and the sketch back. And now you can see if I off click on this layer, cancel that, I'm sorry. We need more space. If you need to adjust a window, you are normally able to grab these and move them. You can also drag them one off and put it in the side menu, which that gave us more space. Now I can click off. And now I have no layers selected. So you can see we've pretty much traced each character, and we've matched it up as good as we can with the sketch. But if I hide our ellipses and we take another look at the sketch, you can see that some of these ellipses are meant to overlap a certain way. For instance, this particular ellipse goes behind the N. This particular ellipse goes behind the N as well here, and behind the I here. This ellipse comes up and actually circles around the I and back behind, circles around the N's loop here, and back behind the I. So we can copy that in Photoshop, and that's the beauty of layers. So let's do that. We'll choose one ellipse at a time, and we'll start with the one that's going to go around the N. It looks like it's going to be this one that goes around the N, because the other one doesn't. If we look at the ellipse, you can see that the actual path that it's taking it wouldn't look real if it was on top of the N. So we're going to make it go behind the N, so that the only part you'll see be this part. So to do that, we'll grab the N and we'll move the layer up right underneath the ellipse we wanted it to be. We'll put it on top of that ellipse. And now what's going to happen if we hide our sketch and we go back and we bring our ellipse back that we were working with, if we put a color in, when we do that, this will be hidden. So let's go ahead and put a color in, just so that we don't have to sit here and imagine it. So we'll grab our paint bucket tool, and this may be actually the default is that it starts out as the gradient tool, which looks like this. It's right below the eraser and right above the blur tool. So right click on the gradient tool and go down to paint bucket tool, not 3D material but paint bucket, and click on that. And then make sure that you have the N layer selected. Right click on this layer, and if we try to just use the paint bucket, you can see that it's giving me, I have the paint bucket selected, and hovering over the pixel space, it's giving me a no sign, which means that it's not prepared yet to accept paint bucket fill. So in order to be able to give this a paint bucket fill, let's make a copy so that we can keep the original and not have to replace it later in case we make mistakes. Let's right click and duplicate this layer and call it N copy. Okay, and then we're going to hide our original N. Now you can see we still have an N. That's the N copy. It's a copy of this layer. It's exactly the same. You can hide either one or both, right? Okay, so we're working with the N copy now, and we'll click on N, and we'll go and we'll click and lock it. Now that layer is locked, we can't make any changes to the pixel data besides, maybe moving it around on the screen. So we'll go ahead and hide it, and we'll select the N copy. On this one, we want to right click and go to rasterize layer. This is going to make it just pixel data. It's no longer a line path, as I believe it's called, or a shape, if you want to think of it that way. Now it's just pure pixel data, so we can edit it. So what we're going to do, this is almost like now, this would be kind of like the same if you were in Paint Shop, or Windows Paint, essentially, and you're going to use the paint bucket tool. So we're going to select a color. Right now, if I hide the background, you might think that these are white, but if I hide the background, you can see that they're not. They're not white at all. They're completely transparent. There's no color. You may want to stop here. If that's the case, then just skip ahead until we start finishing up the overlaps on the rings. But if not, we can go ahead and put in some color. I'm going to choose to use the green color, and I'm going to go down here and select my color drop. And you can see it gives me a dropper if I want to select a color from my document, but we don't have any color in here besides the black lines. So I'm going to come in and I can adjust the slider to get to reds or yellows or greens or light blues or dark or purple, etc. Right? So I want to make mine a nice green. And I'm going to select this, and you can choose inside here to adjust your white and black scale of the green. I want something slightly dark, not too dark. That looks good. You can also enter in a hexadecimal color code. You can add these two swatches to pre-select. But we're just going to choose this color, and later on we can also come in and just look and see what color this is if we need, or write this down if you need to know what this color is. You can also just copy this text and paste it somewhere in the name as a note or something. I'm not going to do that because I don't need to. So I'm going to just click OK. Oh, I'm sorry. That was on the other window. Probably couldn't see that. I want to bring that into the screen. Here we go. There's the color picker. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so here's the slider to select, where you're at in the spectrum, and then this is your white-black scale of the color. We're gonna go down to more of like a greeny, bluish green, and a little bit darker. That's good. So make sure you have the paint bucket tool and our N copy, which we've rasterized, and now I'm going to click inside the outline. And there we go, just like in regular paint. And so let's do the same thing for I, and we'll click on it, and we'll right click, and we'll go to rasterize, duplicate the layer because we want to keep original. Lock the original, and then hide it. And then on the copy, right click and rasterize. And then we'll also use the same. We'll use the same color. And inside the circle, we have a problem. There we go. Screen. That was a cursor issue on my point. Click and make sure you click inside with the drippy part of the bucket. Now you can see where the N actually does overlap the I, and the ellipse is actually going behind the N. So the N is overlapping both this ellipse and the I. Now if we go back and let's show another ellipse, and this ellipse needs to go both around the top of the I and around the top of the N. So let's go ahead and move that on the very top, move that layer. I'm sorry. that was the wrong one. Move ellipse 1 copy 2 goes under the N. It might be a little confusing. You'll have to, if they're named different, you'll have to remember the names. So we'll select. You can see it when you click on the layer. It also selects. It shows you the highlight of the shape. So we have ellipse copy 1. Okay, this one needs to be at the topmost, because you can see now when I off click, you can see that it comes over the N here and over the I here. Now you'll notice we have one issue here. We have a situation in which we need this one shape to be both on top of the N here and underneath the N here, so that it looks like it's three-dimensionally wrapping around it, because that's what's done in the graphic or what's meant to be done in the sketch. That's what I meant. So in order to accomplish that, what we can do is actually copy this ellipse 1, so we can keep the original like the other ones, and we're gonna rename this. Well, let's rename all these ellipses. The first ellipse, ellipse 1. I name the copy of that ellipse 2 instead of ellipse 1 copy 2, and then name the other original ellipse copy to copy ellipse 3. Now, when we create a duplicate, it'll be ellipse 3 copy 1 or something. Ellipse 3 copy. So I'll delete this layer so we can see that. Okay, so we select ellipse 3, which is the one in question, and I right click and I go to duplicate and ellipse 3 copy. Now we know that that's the copy of ellipse 3. And what I want to do is I need to work with the pixels, so I'm going to rasterize. It's still over the N here, so that's fine. But what we need to do is get rid of this section. So we'll go down and we'll select the eraser tool, and we're going to create a visual illusion by actually deleting the pixels that come across this section of the N. Make sure the ellipse 3 is hidden, and you can see where you're working. That's why we've kept this original. I'll go ahead and show it, and you can see that it comes back. We've only done it to the copy. Now, ellipse 3 is still a shape as well, so go ahead and lock ellipse 3 since we're not going to be using it for visual and we just want to save it. And we'll hit Control 0. Now you can see, maybe I'll zoom up a little bit so you can see, it is overlapping the N here on the top of it, and here it looks like it's going behind it, but in reality we've just cut out the pixels so you can't see them, which would essentially be what would be done in code, what have you, if we were able to do a dual overlap like that. But essentially what we're making this overlap happen with layers, and with changing where the layer is in our section. The topmost layer is the one that is on top of everything, so that's the high layer, and the bottommost layer is on the bottom of everything, the background. So if I show the background, everything shows, nothing's hidden behind it, you know what I mean? So let's Control 0. That's what we've got so far. So far it's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and show our other ellipse, ellipse 1. And now we have all three ellipses being shown. Ellipse 1 needs to be both beneath the N but on top of the I. So what we'll do is we'll grab that layer, ellipse 1. Or no, I'm sorry, it needs to be below, it needs to be beneath both the N and the I. So we'll grab ellipse 1 and pull it beneath the I. And deselect it. And now we can see that it goes behind the N here and behind the I here. So everything is overlapping quite nicely. Now, just in order to kind of clean this up a little bit, we're going to go to the N copy. So right click on it, and we're going to go to the layer blending options. In the blending options, pull the screen over. In the blending options or layer style, you can do things like bevel and emboss, stroke, inner shadow, etc. And if you really, it's nice to just come in here and play with these settings. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with these settings, especially when you get into adding extra layers and things like that. You'll use these quite often. So you can see if I click bevel and emboss, the checkbox right here, you can see how it's done something now to the end. Almost makes it look almost 3D. Nothing over here has changed, but if I want to edit the settings for the bevel and emboss, then I actually click the text, and now you can see it's highlighted that whole section, and now the settings here have changed. So now what I can do is I can come in and I can say, okay, well, I want to increase the depth by adjusting the slider of this emboss. And if you look over here while I'm moving this, you can actually see that it's adjusting the depth of the emboss, like how much is it popping up off the screen to create a 3D looking effect. And then you can also make it chisel hard, which it just, as you can see, accentuates all the little hiccups in the pixels. Chisel soft, which is just reduced version, and then there's smooth. Generally you'd probably want smooth. It's adds more of like a blur effect, which looks better on screen usually. If that's the effect you're going for. You can also switch the direction, so instead of popping up off the screen, it looks like it sinks down into the screen, right? Or you can adjust the size. You can see what it does there. And then you can soften, and when you soften, what you'll see is, like, you notice these little like sharp kind of edges that you can see. When I adjust the soften, it kind of curves those. It looks like it curves those out, so like almost like a bubbly effect instead of a sharp line, more of a bubble, a curve. For this particular tutorial, we're not going to use a bevel and emboss because I don't think it looks right. For the style I'm going for, I just wanted to keep it simple for a logo, especially a logo done in Photoshop. I did this tutorial in Photoshop because I think it's good for people who are just starting out to start out in Photoshop. But I want to make the point to say that it's probably preferable to create logos in Adobe Illustrator, since it works primarily, well, it does pretty much handles everything in vector data, which is like lines, which in Photoshop, everything kind of, even though we were just working with lines, it made those lines using pixels. So this particular logo can be scaled down and still look good, but unfortunately it cannot be scaled up, because then you get pixel distortion. If you created the logo in Adobe Illustrator, then you wouldn't have like the really nice blending options and things like that, but and it can be a little bit harder to work with, I think, especially for someone that's beginning. But you end up with a completely scalable end result, which in a really professional, if you're trying to design like, if you're just coming up with the design of a logo rather than just creating a graphic, for the web of that logo, maybe the design itself could be reused for any number of different things, like the web or print or things like that, to print on boxes or products and things like that. So you want it to be able to be scaled any which way that needs to be done, and to do that you need vectors. So to finish out the tutorial, we're going to add a stroke. A stroke is just kind of outlines the shape, and we're going to, again, if I just click on the text, it'll check it, and it'll give me the settings for stroke, and I can change the line size used for the stroke to a 1 or a 2 or 3 or 5 or 4. For this, I'm going to use a I'm going to use a 2 because I think it looks nice. So we're going to go with a 2 stroke and hit OK. And that was just for the N. Now we can go through and do all that same stuff just for the I, but instead we're going to right click on the N and go to copy layer style. Then we're going to go down to our I copy that we colored green, and we're going to right click, and then we're going to click paste layer style. And if you're watching the I, it has the same stroke now with the same stroke size as the N does. Now for our ellipses, we can do the same thing and add, go to right click, paste layer style, and it will stroke it with a 2. That makes them pretty thick. I'm going to go ahead and do it and see how that turns out. And if I don't like it, I can always go back to their blending options and reduce the size. Paste layer style and paste layer style. You don't need to rasterize to do the blending options and the layer styles. It's kind of something that's done right over top of the pixel data. Those blending options have a lot of different settings, and you can do quite a lot with them. So we've added the layer style to each one of the ellipses that we created, and so now I'm just going to click off by clicking on the background layer. And as you can see, we are pretty much finished with our graphic. And you know, I think that these lines are just too thick, so I'm going to reduce them by right clicking on one of them. That was our I copy, we need an ellipse. Right clicking on the ellipse, blending options, and you can see it has the stroke. I'll right click, and I'm going to reduce that to a 1. And then I'm going to copy the layer style and paste it on each one of the other ellipses that we are using. And then, okay, and now that we're finished with making the graphic and adding some color and things to it, just to make it look nicer, if we hit Control S, we can attempt to save the Photoshop document, also known as a PSD or .psd file, with the extension PSD. So in Photoshop, hit Control S, and it'll bring up this Save As menu if it hasn't been saved yet. And then you can just give it a name, and we'll call it PS tutorial, or we'll call it ni.psd, and we can just type in ni and it'll automatically through the format selection. As you can see, you can select many different formats depending on what your needs are, if you want to work with a third-party program, etc. So we'll just call it ni, and it'll automatically name it a PSD file, and we'll click save. And it's asking us if we want to maximize the compatibility of the file. We're going to go ahead and say OK. So now what we can do is we've saved the Photoshop document, but as you may or may not be aware, you generally can't display a Photoshop document in a web page. You need Photoshop for that. So how do we get rid of export our graphic so that it can be used on the web? What we're going to do is actually use the shortcut keys, because I feel like it's very handy to use the shortcut keys. Or you can go to File and go to Save for Web, which the shortcut key is Alt-Shift-Control-S, Save for Web. So you can click here, or you can just hit Control-Alt-Shift and S, and you can see it brings up a Save for Web thing here, and I'm kind of low on space because of the recording, but you can see here it gives you a little display window, and you can adjust like the zoom. Usually it's at 100% or so. You can adjust the zoom so you can see it, and then it's going to give you some in the top right corner. It's going to say preset, and it's going to give you a select drop down, and the default preset here, maybe it was because I had already changed it, was PNG24. But just below that, where it says PNG24 here, click that, select, and it gives you just basic selections. Here is much, GIF 128 dither, GIF 128 no dither. These are like intricate presets. For now, just go with the standard ones. And to start off, select the GIF. And what I want to show you is once you select GIF, come down here and you can see it's saying, okay, as a GIF file, this is kind of semi what it would look like. This is the color table that it's going to use because it's for the web, so you have limited colors. So this is the color table it's going to use. And then it's going to tell you right here, as a GIF file, at 22.5 kilobytes a second download speed, it will take, at 22.5 kilobytes, that's what size this will be. It will take 5 seconds to download this with a 56K connection, which is like a dial-up connection. It would take 5 seconds to download this file as a GIF. If I change it to a JPEG, you can see that it's changed now JPEG, and the file size is actually larger for a JPEG than a GIF, and it would take longer to download. And you can actually say size versus cable. You can change. Oh, okay, how long would this be for somebody with super high speed internet? It would download it in a second, right? So we'll go back to what the standard is, probably like somewhere around 128 is probably more accurate, but we'll keep it as default. So if we go now and we switch from JPEG and we'll go PNG8. PNG8 is again like the GIF, 5 seconds at 22.01 kilobytes. If we go back to the GIF, it's 22.5 kilobytes. So the GIF is actually slightly larger than the PNG8. And the PNG8 PNG8 will handle transparency, whereas a GIF file will not handle transparency, or at least it handles it very poorly. And we can see that if I cancel this, if I could cancel it, if I could reach the button, I'm going to move my bar here. There we go. Gives more screen space. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. And I'm going to remove the background. So now there's no background on this. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the crop tool to delete some of this excess space because it's just taking up file space. So I'm going to select the crop tool, and then I'm going to drag it down until I'm only showing pixels that have color. I don't care about transparent pixels. And if you can't quite get it right because it's snapping too hard on you, what you can do is just zoom up, maybe not quite that far, zoom up, and then it'll allow you to adjust it even more accurate. And this is a good way to really save some file space or file size and speed with your graphics, is really make sure that they fit tightly in their boxes. And that will save you some space. So we're gonna hit OK, and there we go. Now we've cut out quite a bit of data, reducing the file size. And now we've also cut out our background copy. Now in the PSD, all we've done is reduce its vision, take out its visibility, so you just can't see it. The data's still there. But when we save this for web, it's actually going to significantly reduce the file size because there's no actual pixel data there. Or, well, technically there is transparent pixel data, but you can see here the GIF now is only 21.61 kilobytes kilobytes, whereas before it was 22. So we've saved some space. Now the GIF looks as though it's I've been, at least in the past, were not very well did not do very well with transparency. So because of that reason, I would recommend um, saving your file as PNG 8, because as we shown earlier, it's actually got even slightly smaller file size than GIF, and it's a better quality image. So we'll go ahead and click save. It's PNG 8, and we're done. And so that's it for this tutorial. I'll try to do another tutorial, Photoshop tutorial 2, maybe, and not sure what we'll get into on that one. And then I definitely want to try to get a Adobe Illustrator tutorial 1 going, and in that tutorial we will recreate this same logo, but we're going to do it with Illustrator and using vectors. So thanks, and send me an email if you have questions, and check out some other tutorials.